So a few months ago, I had a sort of reunion with my two best friends from middle school. And the three of us had not been together in 21 years. And it was like no time had passed. My good friends Gigi and Carl. And as I was driving down to Plymouth to see them, I said a prayer. And I feel like I can't really witness effectively to our faith to others. So as I was driving down to see them, I said just very simply, I said, Lord, if I can witness to them in just some little way, please do it. Okay, so we got together. We had a great night. And I said, I got to invite them to church. And actually, I read on Twitter this morning, and a statistic. The statistic said 82% of the people that you invite to church will say yes. And then it said only 2% of us will ever make that invitation. And then I remembered that like 2/3 of all statistics are made up. I don't know if it's true or not. But the point is, so I invited my friends, and they said yes. And they were at Mass last night. And then, so okay, well, let's push. Now, Plymouth, okay, long drive to come to Plymouth, or from Plymouth to come to here for church. So I said, I'll push the envelope. I said, why don't you guys come to Christmas Mass? I got 1 out of 2. So I leave that to you because maybe some friends are home, or maybe there's some family that's home. And if you extend an invitation to them to join you, it might be just the thing they're looking for. I can say for myself, and I can say for our entire team, we are endeavoring to craft an uplifting message and experience. So everyone's hungry for something. We'll talk about that in a moment. But just maybe you could be the important instrument that makes a huge difference in their life. So as we said, we've lit the 4th candle on our Advent wreath, and we are in the 4th week of our Advent message series that we're calling, What Are You Waiting For? And over these past weeks, we've been saying that we are all waiting for something. From your turn in line, to that package from Amazon, to sometimes we don't even know what it is we're waiting for. We just know that we're waiting on something because at some level, we know something is missing from our life. And if that weren't the case, but it is, if it weren't the case, there would be no such thing as coping mechanisms or feelings of frustration or even midlife crises. We're grasping for those things that we feel are just out of reach, but we can't get there on our own. We long for more because we are made for more. The Jews of Jesus' time experienced this too. And so they were waiting for the Anointed One, or in Hebrew, the Messiah. The one who would deliver them from oppression and bring about restoration. And since they lived under Roman occupation, they thought that this Anointed One, or Messiah, would be a political or a military leader. A sort of strong man who would stand in their corner and fight their battles for them. But we can see the mistake, because it's easy for us to blame our problems on something outside of ourselves and to think that the solution to our problems is somewhere out there. Like things we could blame it on. Roman occupiers, political leaders, or even, COVID restrictions that we think go too far or not far enough. But whenever we do these things, we're looking outside of ourselves to solutions that can only be found in here. Because if we are honest with ourselves, most of our problems are not out there, but in here. That's why Jesus, in his preaching, he didn't rail against the political authorities of his time. But even still, people hung on his words because they knew that they had a problem bigger than the Romans. A problem that stems from that interior brokenness we all have as a result of sin. And so, we, like the Jews of Jesus' time, need a Messiah. A Messiah who can bring about a renewal of our hearts. Today's gospel that we just read, the setting for it was just under 9 months before Christmas. So to set the stage, Mary at this point has received the message of the archangel Gabriel that she would bear a son. She's conceived by the power of the Holy Spirit, and in her body, she carries this infant king who has saved his people from their sins. And then the last thing that the archangel Gabriel told her was that Elizabeth, her cousin, was 6 months pregnant herself. And so we read, Mary set out and traveled to the hill country in haste to a town of Judah. That's Mary's very specific response to God's call in her life. Mary didn't hang around and wait for someone to ask her, what are you waiting for? No, Mary saw a need and she made haste. Whenever we see someone who's hurting or in need, we have to do the same thing. We're not supposed to just wait around. We're supposed to go. And I think mothers have this instinct just built into them. I'm thinking of my sister-in-law, Sarah. When we're home and with one of the children gets hurt, it's like, bam, she's there. Sometimes even before the child starts crying. And similarly, when Jesus enters our life, it should trigger on our part an immediate response. Last weekend, we promoted our Advent missions drive to help those who are less fortunate than ourselves. Before heading into last weekend, we had only raised about $1,900, which was significantly short of what our goal was going to be. And if I sounded a little desperate last weekend in our pitch, well, that was why. I was nervous that we weren't going to be able to come through for the people at the level that we were expecting. But, like Mary, you all responded with haste. And as of the end of this week, I'm pleased to share that we have raised over $21,000 for our mission partners in our local St. Vincent de Paul societies and the outreach programs at Holy Family in Dorchester. And a part of this, just to kind of put a little more flesh on this, as a result of your giving, the children of 30 families in Maynard are going to have a brighter Christmas. So, thank you. So let's look more at Mary's response to put things in perspective. So when Mary heard about her cousin's pregnancy and she wanted to go help, it wasn't like she just picked up the phone and made a call, nor was it like she just had to walk across the street or drive to the other side of town. No, her cousin Elizabeth lived 90 miles away. So for Mary to get there, she had to set out on foot for a journey that would take several days. Think about the level of her response. And then when she got there, we read, Mary entered the house of Zechariah, that's Elizabeth's husband. She greeted Elizabeth, and when Elizabeth heard Mary's greeting, the infant leaped in her womb. I think this is just amazing. So Mary, just to think about this, so Mary had just conceived, so we're well within the first trimester. Maybe, within a month, a couple of weeks, a week, very, very early. So there's nothing on the outside to give this away. But instinctively, Elizabeth and then the little child within her knew. That little child in Elizabeth was to become John the Baptist. And John the Baptist sort of stands as the dividing line between the Old Testament and the New Testament, because John the Baptist was sort of the last prophet to foretell the coming of the Messiah. And even from his mother's womb, he begins his mission by leaping for joy. Jesus comes, and John responds by leaping for joy. As we talked about it several weeks ago, the message, the substance of John the Baptist's message is quite simple. Basically, John the Baptist says, what are you waiting for? Hurry up, get ready. The Messiah comes. And then finally, we have Elizabeth's response. Elizabeth says, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb." The origin of the Hail Mary prayer, and a reminder that every life is unique, precious, and full of possibility, no matter the circumstances of conception. And then Elizabeth continues, "How does this happen to me," she says, "that the mother of my Lord should come to me?" We see this recognition. She recognizes who Jesus is, even though she can't see him. And also in her voice, we can hear this profound sense of humility. Elizabeth recognizes who Jesus is, but she doesn't feel worthy that Jesus should come to her. And it's true. None of us are worthy to receive God into our life. None of us are worthy to receive Jesus into our hearts in Holy Communion. But he comes anyway. And the theological point is this: none of us are worthy of God. You cannot make yourself worthy of God. But God can make you worthy of him. And he does this through his free gift that we call grace. And when it comes to grace, you cannot earn it. You cannot buy it. You cannot make yourself worthy of it. All you can do is accept it or reject it. And I think this teaching is difficult sometimes for us to accept because we see our brokenness, we see our unworthiness and all and we think like, who am I? Lord, why would you come to me of all others? But God does come. And when he comes, it doesn't matter anything that's in our background. He looks at us with all of the love in the world and more, and he extends a grace-filled invitation and says, "Come, follow me, be my disciple." And again, the choice is yours. You can say yes or no. God doesn't force his way into our lives. He proposes. He doesn't impose. So let's conclude by recapping some of the responses that we've talked about. Mary said yes and set out in haste to see Elizabeth. Many of you said yes and gave to those who were in need. John the Baptist said yes by leaping for joy. And Elizabeth said yes, even though she didn't feel worthy. We're in the season of yes. So, when the Messiah arrives in your life, say yes, so that you can walk along the path that leads to a better life. What are you waiting for?